Hi, everybody. Paul Vernon with Stantec. I'm an architect, a planner, and an urban designer. I represent our Urban Places brand, which is all about things exactly like this study, working with communities and talking about mixed-use districts and thinking about ideas and actions moving forward. One of the things that I want to say before we get into uh, you know, and taking a look at some of the ideas that came forward. The ideas that are in this report or the final deliverables are really, in many ways, hypothetical and some ways speculative. We attempted throughout the course of the project to put information out there that would get a reaction. So you'll see things in this document that may or may not be possible. You'll see things in this document that you may or may not approve of. But it was meant to get an understanding about ideas in sort of four critical areas, right? Placemaking, increasing connectivity, diversifying land use, and increasing amenity, right? When you see the district for the first time, I mean, it's a bit plain. There are not a lot of sidewalks in places, so connectivity is an issue. It's relatively singularly land use, and as we polled tenants and folks that are in the district, they asked for things to be closer to them, restaurants and other such things, and also adding amenities to it. So where you see ideas that may seem out there or not possible, the ideas were not meant to be plans to move forward with. They were just meant to give us information about how to move forward. We've spent a lot of time meeting with a lot of folks, public agency representatives, owners and tenants, and neighborhood groups. And at the tail end of this deliverable are a series of surveys that we use to help inform both the positives, the ups and the downs on the ideas. Excuse me, and just get a pulse on how people felt about some of the pieces that were put forward. It was a three-phase process, right? We initially, talked about, what were the opportunities and issues to identify. We had kind of a visioning process, and this then is the vision for ideas and action. This is the boundary of the study area in black, talking about Renaissance Park, Innovation 411, and GSK, and the map to the right in the very bright blue here. Shows how it lives in proximity to King of Prussia, the mall, highways, and rail, being right on the Norristown high-speed line, with one of the stations at Hughes Park being right there. We took a look at land use and zoning. That's something that, as planners, we always take a look at. One of the things that is very advantageous here in reference to zoning, particularly in the Renaissance Park area, is that the suburban metropolitan zoning district is pretty permissive, right? So if you wanted to include retail and or other uses beyond the sort of mostly office uses that are there now, wouldn't require a change in zoning, and it wouldn't likely require any kind of overlay in zoning unless an overlay had to do with design guidelines and other things such as that. So zoning is in place that would allow for any bit of transformation in reference to changing the diversification of land use in the district. Taking a look at mobility, it's obviously a car-centric place. But it does have SEPTA bus service that goes through it. If you see this poor guy down here in the green, that's a representation of there's kind of a lack of sidewalks in a lot of places. It has close proximity to the Norristown high-speed line. And during the meetings, Chris and Eric talked with the business owners about the possibility of moving forward with bringing the connector shuttle service into it. And this graphic down on the right is just a sample of an improved bus shelter, which is one of the recommendations in the action list at the end of the project. Crosswalks are sometimes non-existent, or they're a little bit tired. So thinking about increasing connectivity for the pedestrian or the cyclist or other modes of transportation that come to the district, seems a viable move forward. When we think about placemaking, thinking about the kinds of things that could be done to the existing gateways and signage, the existing entrance at Renaissance Park off of Sweetland, and the other entrance signage at Horizon, they don't match, right? So, and one is landscaped, one is not. Although this picture was taken in winter, so it might have more landscaping now. But are there ways that we can think about adding artistic elements, banners, doing new signage packages, or repurposing the signage that's there now to help build a stronger brand and identity for the place, as a way to sort of increase its look and feel in the market. And some of those things can be quite simple. Down here on the lower left, there's this really lovely utility box at this entrance piece. And, could it just simply be, covered with an interesting graphic, right? Similar concept here, right? Could we find a way to cover this utility box, place a bit of signage on top of this existing pedestal that's there, and perhaps do some landscaping, and this is that same concept. And I believe one or two signs are already being adjusted to this, or conceptually being adjusted to this concept, where we're repurposing the base of the signage, but then creating a larger and tenant visible and tenant personalized situation for signage throughout the district, just to increase its brand and identity. Or thinking about like starting from scratch. And one of the recommendations is about updating signage by retaining a branding identity consultant to think about an overall package of signage and wayfinding throughout the district. We took a look at landscape. Again, this picture on the right was taken in the winter, but what it begs to us is the question mark: are there ways that we can think about diversifying the landscape so that it has more color and more interest throughout the season, so that it's kind of always lush and lovely? Could we, add different kinds of trees into the medians, along the paths and walkways that exist now, or new paths and walkways that could be created over time? Are there ways that we can introduce seats and amenity and color, grasses, and just other kinds of things to add an increase in color, texture, and just ramp up the overall feel of the landscape throughout the district? Taking a look, there are places on private property where there are benches and seating and amenities for folks, but not so much, kind of close to the public realm, or inside the right of way. So are there places where we could add benches, where we could add trees and landscaping, introduce again, creative artistic elements into the landscape, along with signage and other things? And are there places where we could increase both active and passive recreation? So for folks, if they're at their lunch break and they want to take a power walk, and eat a snack bar at the same time, that those kinds of things are available. And also, if there was a sort of circuit of connectivity that even adjacent folks in the adjacent residential community could think of the district as a place where they go and they run in the evening, or they walk their dog, and sort of really think about how that amenity would be helpful both for folks that are inside the district, but also as an amenity for the adjacent residential neighbors as well. In thinking about connectivity, this map on the right, the bright orange are the existing roads and entries. There's sort of this pale pinkish color up here, which are some back roads that kind of start to create a grid Everything that's in this light blue color is existing sidewalk. And this was a surprise because when we made this map, we realized that there's kind of actually a lot more sidewalk there than you would think. There just isn't a lot of sidewalk on the roadway. But excuse me, then in bright green, we show some connection in here. We show some connection over here to these two bus stops and up into this quadrant. And then with a little bit of sidewalk along here, really at the center of the district, you can create kind of almost a complete connective network back out to Hughes Park. But then sort of the central portion of the district starts to be much more highly connected. In the northern portion, it's pretty devoid of sidewalks, and one of the recommendations is a landscape master plan, and that would think about both the landscape issues that are talked about in earlier slides, but would also think about a kind of over time process to think about adding sidewalks to create connectivity. In the bright blue, completely speculative, popular for some, not popular for others, just thinking through, are there ways to add additional vehicular entrances into the district so that the place acts more like a grid than an isolated dead-ended place, and how that would have an impact on access to the district, but also the marketing of the district. Obviously, and in the action plan, it talks about a general circulation study. No thinking about additional entrances in any way, shape, or form could not be thought about without understanding traffic counts along the major roadways and just understanding what overall traffic impacts would happen, for the neighborhood areas that may find themselves impacted if there were adjustments to be made, to entrances and exits, and that would be an engineering study that we'd want to take a look at. This image in the upper left was kind of the first image that really, on the first slide at one of the sessions, I had on this slide, like, where am I, right? And this is what got us into the thinking about placemaking, but also issues of increased connectivity. There's no sidewalks on this image, but you see there are other places where there are trails and other sidewalks. But we think that finding ways to really better identify crosswalks at the major intersections, getting across the streets from bus stop to bus stop, and creating safer, more visible ways in which pedestrians that are in the district can get to and from is pretty important. This graphic here, in one of the polls, we wanted to get an idea generally about where folks were coming to and from the district. The big answer is number one, east along Church into Horizon, and then the others are down in the south. So not a huge spread, but that kind of information would inform the general access study that's talked about in the action plan. On the southern end, with GSK and Innovation 411, the big move that we thought about here was extending Renaissance Boulevard across, through, and down to River Road, just to make an easier option, a way to tie the two sort of halves of the district together, and set up a way that for the owners of this property to start to subdivide their property, but also give greater another option for access and connectivity and to reduce isolation. These three graphics are the existing roadway condition. Condition right now. It's essentially 4 lanes of traffic, basically no sidewalks, and we wanted to take a look at options where we might provide an amenity for bikes and peds on the roadway without adding sidewalks, providing an opportunity for pedestrians and cyclists by adding sidewalks, and maybe at some point in time, street lighting and pedestrian lighting. I don't think that that's something that you would do until after you had a greater diversity of land use, because without the pedestrian counts to to think about it, that doesn't necessarily make sense. But the roadway is wide enough to accommodate the traffic that it has on it now, and potentially provide additional amenity for cyclists, as this photograph shows here. The road is wide enough. If you wanted to add bike lanes on it, you could. This is the hypothetical entrance. Here on this graphic, we talk about a station area plan, and DVRPC with SEPTA just released a study that talks about some improvements in this area. It doesn't talk about this as an entry, but it shows some additional pedestrian upgrades to make crossing safer. It talks about ways to potentially accommodate additional parking, which we show here. This diagram shows a previously approved housing complex for this site, some expanded parking, and there was a curb cut entry into this site shown on that plan, but we just made a conceptual adjustment as a way to more formalize an entry here. Add some branding, identity, signage, and landscaping, sidewalks, and really formalize an entry here. For some folks, when polled, this is a good idea. For some folks, when polled, this is a bad idea. Like I said, this is just conceptual out there to get people talking. But it would have to be, as I said, part of a broader general access and circulation study, because you'd have to think about these two intersections in concert in terms of safety. You'd have to think about counts in terms of feasibility. So it's just out there as a conceptual thought. Taking a look at parking throughout the district, it's a little interesting. There are places that are sort of, really parked, right? So much so that cars are parking on the street, which lets us know that the circulation patterns can work. But even right where there are lots of cars parking on the street, adjacent is an empty lot. This lot, the multiple times that I was out, was almost always empty. We took a quick count to see if you could do parallel parking on both sides of the street. Like, what does that mean in terms of size? And it represents about 110,000 square feet. And if you could pull the parking out of the lots, maybe that's an opportunity to add square footage elsewhere, potentially in terms of diversification of land use, or just increased development opportunity. And this graphic here just highlights the two far edges as parallel parking. And in one of the recommendations, item 3C, is the question mark in the study about determining whether or not the district is over or under parked. Might there be opportunities for shared parking for places where it is over and or under, because so that we can determine what is the right amount of parking that's needed. And especially now, as things move forward, post-pandemic, I know for our office, when I go back to work, I will probably only go back to work in office 2 days a week. And so if patterns are going to change about how people are in their offices, how does that have an impact on how it is we get to and from work? And how does that have an impact on the asphalt? In terms of thinking about diversification of land use, based on this 10,000 square foot right here, and just that this is the horizon and Renaissance are the intersection, we just put this conceptual idea forward to think about: is there a place in the district that you could start to create a center, and you could start to think about adding land uses, say, such as a hotel or a bank or a restaurant or a convenience store, bump up the landscaping a bit, perhaps signalize the intersection, and or Chris told me yesterday, there's an idea out there about, even potentially putting a roundabout here, which is a perfectly good idea. Increasing the sidewalks, to the bus shelters, and improving those. And just, is there an opportunity to create a center or a place within the district that adds both diversifies land use, but also provides an additional amenity, so I don't have to get in my car, drive out of the district to get my sandwich for work, or if it's a small convenience store, I can pick up toilet paper and a can of dog food or cat food, when I'm on my way home. But just as a way to start to bring some additional diversity throughout the district. The tail end of the document then is this action item list, and I'm not going to read through this because that would be tedious. But some of the things I've gone through as we've been talking about, this retaining a signage, branding, and identity firm to talk about signage throughout the district. This notion here about a landscape master plan to really think through the diversity of landscape, sidewalks, amenities, and other things throughout the district. And that goes to the same thing about increasing connectivity, both through this general access and circulation study, and then also the landscape master plan. In terms of diversifying land use, completely speculative, right? We're showing, what may be provocative ideas on people's land that willingness is not something you can map. So that's going to have to be, an ongoing conversation. And, based on what individual property owners, are interested in doing, or if diversification of land use is of any interest. And then the issues about increasing amenity, again, follow through with some of the other studies that were mentioned before. We talk about improving bus shelters, and that would be a collaboration with Clear Channel, who owns them now. And then any issues around the Hughes Park Station, that would be collaboration with SEPTA. The tail end of the document is just the polling, and I won't go through that. So I think we could go to Chris or Eric. If you guys have anything to add, we could go into Q&A.
Great, thanks, Paul. Thanks for the presentation.